Good evening. My name is Berg. I have a PhD. It's actually in zoology, but for 40 years I've been a marine biologist, ecologist, watershed manager, and water pollution specialist. I am in charge of the Blue Water Task Force of the Kauai chapter of the Surfrider Foundation. And we're out there all the time testing the water every month for sewage contamination all around the island. We also do other projects looking at pesticide problems on the island, and in certain areas where we find heavy pollution, we go out and study it and then try to pass that information on to the Department of Health for them to follow up on in a more sophisticated, better way. And we're looking at 3 different kinds of areas. We're looking at the beaches themselves, where we all play. We're looking out there at the surf breaks, because after all, we're Surfrider. And we're looking at the estuaries. And the estuary is where the freshwater streams and rivers meet the beaches and the ocean. And here on this island, especially, we have a lot of places that the kids just love to play at, whether it's Willy Willy Stream or Kaloa Landing or at Hanalei, right at the mouth of the river and the pier. Those are areas where the two mix. And that's where you really see where the influence of what goes on land hits the ocean waters. So we have 3 different areas we're studying, and we have 2 kinds of studies. One is studies of the fecal indicating bacteria to monitor public health risk. So we're looking if any sewage is getting into the waters, and if it carries with it bacteria and viruses, things that would make us sick. Now, we all know that if we're in the water at all, we get sore throats, we get eye infections, ear infections, may get diarrhea, vomiting. That's the kind of thing we get regularly. And we also get something called leptospirosis, which is a bacteria infection, goes through an open wound, and that can shut down your kidneys and your liver and make you really, really sick and, in fact, kill you. So the first thing is looking at things that put the public health at risk. And the second kind of studies that we do are what's happening to the environment. So we're not as concerned if for example, if there's a pesticide in the water at low concentration, it's probably not going to hurt us as we go swimming once, but it's going to hurt the fishes, it's going to hurt the crabs, it's going to hurt the whole marine life. So we have the nutrients, which are the fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, pesticides, detergents, dishwashing detergents, clothes washing detergents, personal care products, things like suntan lotion, insecticides, what else? Think caffeine is another one. And the last thing is the ocean acidification, how it's becoming acidified by global climate change, CO2 buildup. The Department of Health has standards, and I'm going to show you a lot of numbers. They have standards for what is a polluted water. So if we go out and take a little bottle of water and we grow the bacteria, there should be no more than 130 in that little bottle of water. Next time I'll bring a bottle to show you. But just a little bottle, and if it happens once or twice, that's not a problem because it probably just rained. But it's not supposed to happen more than 10% of the time. So if it happens more than 10%, they're saying something's wrong there. You're getting polluted more and more. The other thing is to take the geometric mean of 5 or more samples, and the geometric mean is the average of the logarithm. But it's just the average value, and it's only supposed to be 35. So these are the 2 ways that we compare our value, and we compare the values over the course of a year. So in this case, these rules are, say, over a 30-day period, you must look at this. But what Surfrider does is says, let's look at it for a year or 5 years. And is it all the time clean, or all the time is it polluted? And the Department of Health has 2 kinds of sites. They have the Tier 1, the most important, where the public goes an awful lot. And these are Puepu Beach, Hanapepe, Kalapake, Lidgate, and Hanalei Pavilion. And they go out twice a week and sample those for the bacteria. Then every place else is Tier 2 sites, and they have about 15 of those, and they sample them once a week, but they sample it like from January to the end of June, and then they go sample someplace else the next time. And what I found out is they will then skip a whole year and not sample it, but the ones that they skip are the ones that give the high counts. The other thing that the Department of Health does is puts out a brown water advisory. So if it rains an awful lot, they will send out an announcement via emails and I don't know what else to the newspapers, to agencies and things. And it says it's a black, in this case the one for Maui, it's a brown water is being advised, and basically stay out of the water. But why should you stay out? Because you may have stuff from overflowing cesspools, sewer manholes, pesticides, animal fecal matter, dead animals, pathogen chemicals, flood debris. It's yucky. It is so polluted. They don't even bother testing it. They know it's going to be yucky. But this one I like because, hey, it may bring in sharks. And so that's unique for in America that we have the shark problem too. Now, these are the values that the Department of Health has, and the Department of Health goes to the beach and walks out maybe knee deep, just goes out a little far, grabs a bucket of water and measures it. And they go to the popular beaches. And so it should not be above 35, and it's only one is above 35. And it should not be above 130, and all of these, never 130. So these are all good, but this one at Waimea Bay at the landing there is polluted. So from the Department of Health data, it's really, really good. The water is nice and clean where you go on the beach. There's a problem that they don't test all of the really bad places. They go to the clean places. And one of them, I'm not sure, Kalapaki Beach Park. You're all familiar with Kalapaki Beach here. They sample right in the middle of the bay, right at the rock in the middle, which is, it's always clean because the waves come in there. They don't sample off to the right by the stream because, as you'll see, it's never clean. So this data is really reassuring that most of our waters are clean. If you go to the beach, the water's nice and clean. Cool, I like that. But what Surfrider does is we go out on a monthly basis, not weekly, with volunteers. I have about 20-something volunteers goes out. We go to 28 surf breaks, streams, and canals. So the surf breaks are because that's where surfriders play out there, and the streams and the canals is because I know that's where all the pollution's coming in from. And I want to see how much is coming in and how bad it is and warn people about it. So this is a little more difficult to show you, but the surf breaks, the surf sites are the ones up top, and they are clean 100% of the time. All of this 20% of the time. That's only 1 out of 5 times. These are all the surf. If you look at surf, they're pretty much clean. Bacala's is the one difference on the west side, and there's a field with cattle in it, and the stream empties right into the surf break. But once you get here and you look at these, especially down here, 100% of the time those areas are polluted. The counts are greater than 130. And here, they should not be more than 35, and these are 15 times as much. But this one, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's 10,000. So it's how much more than that? 200 times, 250 times what it's supposed to be. So we have identified that most of our surf breaks, the water out there is nice and clean. And go surfing, unless it's really brown water. But when you start looking at the individual canals and streams, then they really are polluted, and the kids should not be playing in them at all. So Nawili Wili Stream, right down here, has 416, 80%. Waiakea, those canals in Kapa'a, they're all bad. The mouth of the Waimea River. This one, Gillen's Beach, you know where that is down in Mahalalapu? Gillen's Beach, 541, 83% of the time it's polluted. And that's all coming out of the stream down here, which has a count of 10,000, 100% of the time it's polluted. So if somebody asks me, and they do, Surfrider gets emails, and we also get phone calls from our website, and they say, hey, I'm coming out from Washington, Oregon, California. I'm coming out here. which of the beaches are clean, which of them are dirty. I think, well, hey, look, go on our website and look. We got a lot of really good, clean water, but just stay out of these different places. Then I give this data to the Department of Health, and they're supposed to go and look at it and do their own testing, and then we hope they'd put up warning signs. The only place they've put up a warning sign is the mouth of the Hanalei River, because I did a 3-year study, actually 5 years of study there, and that used to be really polluted until we took out all the cesspools right along the river and replaced them with septic tanks and stuff. And then the bacteria count dropped more than in half, and I'll show you, we did a test looking at whether it's human bacteria or cow bacteria, and it no longer human, it was pig bacteria. So this is the kind of data that we get, and we get it every year, and so this is the 2015 summary, but we've been doing it for 7 years, and it's been in the newspaper until this year. They've always just put the whole table and stuff. This year, the reporter rewrote it a little bit and didn't put the table in.
And now Willy Stream, that's the one that empties in the Kauai, but it's
Yes,
yeah.
right there.
And there you're testing like in the ocean, but just as the stream.
No, we're testing the stream.
The stream.
He's doing it, that guy there. And so he's testing it right where you have to walk across the stream. That's the stream sample. But he then paddles out to out there, which is the Kalapaki Bay surf, here, out here, and that's where he's getting that one. That one has a low count, and it's only once. And you expect that because we get rain, and that gets back to the brown water advisory. When you get rain, you have a problem.
What about Hula Stream? You don't test the Hula Stream?
No, we don't. We don't up there. The one we do test is at Niamalo at the beach park, down here, where the canoe club is, right?
Okay,
Yeah, and look how bad it is. It's really, really bad. And so if you ask me, where's it coming from? All the homes right down there on the flat, right along the river, they're all on cesspool. And you dig down 3 feet or 4 feet, and the water's just moving right through there. That's my guess, but the Department of Health hasn't followed up on that. And then after, so on Saturdays, these guys, we all go get our water samples, we give the bacteria food, we grow them overnight, we put them under a black light, count them, and then those numbers I put on our website, and you can go there, and here is the graph. This is what you would see. Kauai.surfrider.org, what we do, Blue Water Task Force, and here are the values in red, yellow, or green. And if you click on any one, you'll see all of the values we've gotten for the past 5 years for that one spot. So all the data is made available as quick as we get it, and anyone can go and look at it and do the history too. One of the places that we've done a lot of work on is Hanalei Bay, and I use this as an example because you have 3 sets of values. If you look at the surf sites out here, the value should not be greater than 130, but the average should be no more than 35. But the surf, 9, 12, 7, 6, it's real low. The surf out there is really clean. The beach, I think it's 16, 5, 8. The beach is water at the beach is really clean. Okay, but the water at these little streams, that's 630, 351, 395, and then here Hanalei 108. That water is not really clean, and it's probably coming from cesspools and also animals back in the watershed. So this was a larger study we did for a couple of years for the Department of Health to try to look at what's going on in Hanalei. So there's some people out there that are talking about how polluted Hanalei is, how polluted the North Shore water is. They haven't looked at the data. Show me what data they have. I don't understand it. Hi. Okay, so one of the questions about Hanalei is how polluted is it? And if it's bacteria, yes, it is polluted. A negative sign means does it meet the standards? And no, it doesn't for bacteria, doesn't really for how muddy it is, and also the nutrients. So Hanalei Bay, the rivers going into the bay, are pretty polluted with fertilizer and bacteria. But what does that mean compared to all the others? Well, the Hanalei River accounts for about 86 of the amount of water going into the ocean. And then these others are really small, Waiole only 10%. But what we can see here, it's a disproportionate. We're getting a lot more bacteria, Enterococcus bacteria from Waiole, but we're getting a lot more nitrates and nitrates. So by looking at this, we can partition off the different areas and say, oh, some of these streams are better or worse than others, and that's where you should go look at them.
Are the injection wells not a source of this pollution as well, or people don't talk about it? Aren't they suspecting them?
You know, up in Hanalei, the little shopping centers have little injection wells. And we were looking in the streams, and so it could migrate to the streams, but it's probably not likely. But the cesspools, which are right along the river, do contribute that. And the other thing, you can just walk right in front. Go right ahead. The problem with the bacteria get caught in the sand and stuff. So the nutrients and the chemicals would come out. But one of the things we can do is we can look at the RNA of the bacteria and tell whether that's coming from humans or pigs or birds. And so when we do that, we find that at the Hanalei Pavilion, we do have proteins from the humans. But we don't find, as I just showed you, we find almost no live bacteria there. So it's coming probably out of the cesspools, septic systems. The stuff gets out, you flush the toilet, it goes into the septic system, it goes out into the ocean days, months, maybe years later. It's dead, but our protein will show that it's there. One of the Koloa Landing has the human factor, Lumahai had human factor, Wailua Beach and Waimea Bay had the human factor. Lumahai was one of the worst. It had both human factors there. We couldn't figure out why until we realized that there was a lot of homeless people living there and a lot of drug dealing going on there. And there was no bathroom facilities there at all. So we spoke to the landowners and asked them if they could try to clean it up. We're starting to test it again. How many of you are familiar with KA, the end of the road? At the very end of the road on the North Shore, there's the beach park, right, and the beginning of the Kalalau Trail. And there's a restroom facility there. And it was being heavily overused, bad shape. So in 2011, they built a new one. And they put great big septic tanks. And then the water coming out of the septic tanks went into a lined pond with plants growing in it. And that was supposed to kill off the bacteria and suck up all the nitrates and phosphates. So I had a student from Kauai Community College, and we went out there, and we took water coming out of that pond, and we found it was huge amount of nitrates and phosphates and large amounts of bacteria. And it wasn't working. And we go down to the beach, and on the beach there, we found that there was a lot of nitrates and phosphates, and the seaweed was growing really well. It was getting a lot of fertilizer there. How could this be happening? So we went and I got the water bill from the State Department of Land and Natural Resources. How many gallons of water did they use? The main source of that water, main use of it, is to flush the toilets there. They wash with a hose, wash down the place, and they also have showers. And one minute shower equals one toilet flush. I measured all this. But I like this graph because you plot it. The septic system out there was designed to accommodate 2,100 gallons a day. These are the daily averages for all those months. So in the summer, it's way above that. And this is almost up to 6,000. So you're putting in 3 times the amount of water into that septic system than it's designed to handle. So what that means is it's not doing its job like that it was designed to. And that would explain why we're getting all this stuff coming right out. So they're now talking about a whole new development out at KA in Hyannis State Park. And I've been working closely with them, and we're going to build another restroom facility, and it's going to be way inland, take the load off of this one. But they're also going to try to limit the number of tourists that are going there by having to have a permit to go in. The other big question people have, especially out at Makua tunnels on the North Shore, and they were saying, oh, all these vacation rentals, there's so many people, there's 12 people in it, and all the sewage is going into the sand and coming right out. So Emily Stauber with Hanalei Watershed Hui group went out and sampled at these places and over a year's period, and she found that there wasn't any bacteria in those places. Looking at her data very closely, I found that the water was not as salty as it should be. So there's probably fresh water coming in there, but what it would say would be that the cesspools or septic system they have are working because the bacteria are not showing up here. Maybe chemicals might be. And the question about it is it killing off the reef in this area? That's the big concern. Well, this first preliminary study said, well, there's no bacteria coming out there, but it doesn't answer whether there's all the soaps and detergents and stuff coming out. Oh, I should add, on number 4, at one time there was a count of 1,500, really high count. And we don't know why that happened, but sometimes there's the monk seals right up there, and they have the same bacteria as humans do. And there's dogs, and there's cats, and there's babies with diapers. And so there's lots of reasons why you could have gotten a one-time really high count.
Well, for example, one baby with one diaper, one time.
Right at that spot.
If that happens once, and you just happen to do the test, then
you'd get it. Yeah, you'd pick it up for sure. And that's why when we do that, we always ask, did you see anything unusual? Way back when they were doing, when we didn't have very many monk seals here, when they were sampling out at Salt Pond, they got a huge count. And he said, well, there was a monk seal right over there. And the monk seals basically have diarrhea. That's the way they work. And so there was monk seal poop all over the place, and it's the same bacteria we test. So that's obvious why it's there. We don't know how fast that would get washed away. And the big thing is if it's not very tasteful, but is it a public health risk? Do they carry the diseases that we could get? And monk seals probably don't carry the same count as cows and pigs and things like that. This is a study I did with some high school students. We started off on the west side and we went to all the streams they did for their science fair project. And they measured nitrates and phosphates, which are the fertilizers, but would come from both sewage and from fertilizer going down the soaps. We looked at detergents, laundry detergents in the water, and we looked at the bacteria. And it was the first time it had ever been done, and I call it the student household index that we invented. And it's obvious that some of the streams are a lot more polluted than other ones. And so if we wanted to go out and do another study, I'd just look and say, well, which one has the highest count? And here you got a lot of bacteria, but you got a lot of detergent. Now detergents, dishwashing detergent, laundry detergent, is not a natural product. It's man-made, and so if you find it, it had to come from humans someplace. So that's a really good one to work with, except you use chloroform and nasty chemicals in doing it. Oop, okay. Hope I go back. Yes. Okay. So if you have any other questions about sewage stuff, I can answer them now or later, but I'm going to switch over to looking at pesticide problem that we were all concerned about. Back when Bill 2491 was moved through and everything, the question was, do we have pesticides in the environment? There's one group, the GMO companies are saying, no, we do everything by the label, perfectly clean, there's no pesticides in the environment. And then there's the anti-GMO people who are saying, no, it's killing us, it's making us all sick. And the question came up, well, where's the data? And we have no idea what data the GMO companies here. I should have asked a disclaimer. Does any of you work for the GMO companies, Seacrop? Okay. They never provided any data. Okay, they have it or not, I don't know. So Surfrider, these guys and all the rest, we went to 40 different places all around the island, and we sampled them repeatedly, and we looked for 3 kinds of pesticides, glyphosate, atrazine, and metolachlor. We did this after the Department of Health did their study, which I was involved in, which found that we did find a lot of pesticides in a few places, but they only looked at 4 spots in Kauai, and they only looked at them once. And the fact that they didn't find something that day didn't mean it wasn't there. So this was over a year's period, and we sampled all the places. Okay, so a circle indicates where we sampled. A red circle means that we got detectable amounts of glyphosate there.
And is this the estuaries that you're testing here, or what?
All the streams, yeah, not the ocean.
Okay.
Not the ocean. We went to the ditches, the canals, the stream mouths, and we tried to go where we didn't think there was salt water up a little bit so we'd get what was coming down in fresh water. So what you can see is there is some glyphosate up on the North Shore around the taro fields, and it's all over the place. And why is it all over the place? Because it's used in people's yards, it's used on the side of the roads, it's used in all the ditch systems, sugar, all the seeds, taro, all of them keep their ditches clean by spraying. And we were studying the ditches. We didn't go into the taro fields. We studied the ditches, and we found it. It's there. Okay, so next look at atrazine. And atrazine is a pre-emergent chemical. Kill the things to keep them from coming out. And again, white is where we sampled. Yellow, in this case, is where we found it. And in most cases, really minute parts, 0.1 parts per billion. Really, 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 really low parts. This one is interesting because my good friend Don Heacock, he has a spring box, and he's been taking the water from the spring and using it for cooking and drinking. It has for 20 years or so. And we tested it, and it had atrazine in it. We tested it again to be sure, and it has atrazine in it. And it's from the sugar days, sugar plantation days. So all back up behind his house in Tulahui was all sugar fields. And that atrazine has percolated down into the groundwater area. And when he takes it out on the side of the hill, he's getting the atrazine. The other place, that's the only, I think we did one other well, we did one other spring, but all the others didn't have anything. All the rest were the ditches, mainly on the west side. Now, metallochlor is another chemical that's used in combination with a lot of the restricted use pesticides, and it moves through the soil with them. And the ones on the North Shore are really, really, really low concentrations. I don't have much faith in them. The ones on the west side, I do. Those are higher concentration. So we didn't find much of that, but it's really only used by the large seed crop companies and maybe coffee, I don't know. And it is a restricted use, and they do report it. Now, this is sort of tabulates what we just saw, that 80% of our samples had pesticide in it, above limit of detection. So how do you do this? You get standard pure glyphosate, and you put it in your machine, and you draw a curve that your sample should fall on that line. If you don't have a really small amount of your chemical, it's below that limit of detection. So these are ones that are above that we're sure it's a positive hit. Okay, so here are the samples with glyphosate. The problem is some places we sampled 5 times, some places we sampled once. But 60% glyphosate, 15%, and 5% metallochlor. But what's more important, I think, is how about the sites? Okay, we did 40 different sites, and 60% of those sites had the glyphosate in it. 22.5% had atrazine in it, and 12.5% had metallochlor in it, of those 40 different sites we sampled all over. So, I don't know, to me, that's not really very reassuring that we have that much pesticides. I would have wished that they were all down 2% or 5% or something like that. The next distressing part is I looked, how many sites had both glyphosate and atrazine? And 17.5%. How many had glyphosate and metallochlor? 5%. There was none that had atrazine and metallochlor. But how many had all 3 of them? 2.5%. So when we look at this, we can see that the stuff is really out there. And it means that the best management practices, the way it's being used, is not sufficient to keep it out of the water in the ditches. That means, do we need bigger buffer zones? Do they have to be better of not spraying when it's windy? I don't know how it got there. And we never sampled right after they sprayed. We sampled when we could get everybody together. We didn't go out right after they sprayed. We didn't go out right after it rained. We went out when it was convenient for me to get 10 of us all around the island sampling the exact same morning.
Do you know if they use the Roundup spray on the sides of the roads here on the side?
Yeah.
I know they do.
Yeah, that's all the glyphosate, the Roundup.
What did they used to do before that stuff came out?
Cut it. And in fact, and we had a lot of discussions over the past 20 years about that, and they said, well, we don't want to use it, but we got to use it. And that's where Mr. Robeson on the North Shore, if you're up there, he goes out and weed whacks all along the sides of the road. Why he does that? He doesn't want them to spray, and if there's no weeds, they won't spray. And so they're not going to change. They're going, oh, we're going to keep using the spray, but they won't if they don't need to. So here's an example of somebody who's really concerned about his community, and it goes out and weeds it and then just says to the county, hey, you don't spray here. It's all nice and neat. So I'll bore you with a couple of here are the different places. This is mainly the west side spots, so you may not be as interested in it, but the top one was interesting because there's a bird sanctuary out there, and we got really high counts all the time here in the bird sanctuary. And guess what? Apparently all the fishes died, everything died, and the birds all left, and the place collapsed. And now we're not sure if it's because it was too hot, too dry, salinity. But one of the recommendations of the joint fact-finding, after we showed them all this data, and there's atrazine in there too, is that it's a bird sanctuary. These are endangered species. The tolerance limit is 0. There can't be any pesticides in there because it'll kill them or hurt them. So they're going to do a lot more studies in the bird sanctuary. But then right next to it is the Kauai ditch, and it had high concentrations. Right next to that, Polihali ditch, that has high concentrations.
The atrazine is a hormone disruptor for the animals too.
And so is glyphosate, and yeah, they're all.
Glyphosate is too?
Yeah. Hanapepe, we sampled a couple different ditches in Hanapepe. Vahiava stream mouth. This one is interesting because we did find the glyphosate, and here the Department of Health study found metolachlor, but they also found a whole bunch of other restricted use pesticides that hadn't been used, or they didn't tell us they were using them. But the health department found it. That's why we went down there. MacArthur, this one is right at the beach park, MacArthur Beach Park, the ditch right next to it, and Pioneer's right across the street. All the stuff's out there. So the west side has a lot more in their ditches than we do up on the North Shore. Here I'm putting up the Honolulu ditches. There's one really, really low concentration of atrazine and metolachlor, but the glyphosate, you got it, and in both the National Wildlife Refuge and all along the highway, they do spray the weeds, which all then dump into the Honolulu River. So one of the questions that came up was with glyphosate, yeah, but it all breaks down. And there's a great study on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia that they found glyphosate, active glyphosate, how far was it? 50 miles offshore, that it was still out there. And they also got an aquarium with seawater in it, and they found if you keep it dark, keep the water blackened out, that the glyphosate stays active for 372 days or something like that, a year. So it doesn't just break down right away, and it's still out there. So the concern I have is with the Honolulu ditches and all these other places is that it's there and it goes out into the ocean and affects the coral reefs and stuff. We had a big fish kill not too long ago out by the shrimp farm on the west side, and the water turned anoxic, no oxygen in it, and it went out and it killed everything. And we went to the beach, and the surprising thing there was there were all of these things that had been living in the ditch. So the sugar company and the seed company say, oh, those are ditches, nothing lives in them, they're, bad. They doesn't mean anything. We don't need to do buffer zones. But what washed up on the beach were oopu, were mullet, were moi, stuff right there that got killed not by pesticides, but by the shrimp farm practices. Okay. Those are the things that we're measuring that have a direct effect on the nearshore environment, and that we're also measuring things like the sea surface temperature. And this was from a couple years ago, a year and a half ago. What it shows is that up here, Kauai is right in the middle of a really hot area. And when you have really hot temperatures, you get coral reef dying or bleaching. They let go of all their zooxanthellae. They turn white and then they die. And so because of El Nino year and because of climate change, CO2 buildup, global warming, we're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And we're at the northern extreme, but both here in the main islands, but also up here in the Northwest Islands, we've had major coral bleaching events last year, and they expect it again this year. The Great Barrier Reef down here, they had a huge die-off this year. It's their summer now, and it's just devastating, and all through by the equator. So we're seeing, in addition to the pollution coming off the land, that just the warming of the water is having a major effect on the oceans. And you put the things together, it doesn't bode well. One of the other things that I've looked at and that you hear about is ocean acidification. And so ocean acidification has been blamed mainly on the CO2 coming out of all the engines, causing the CO2 mixing into the water and causing the pH to drop, to go down, becoming more acidic. And so oceans are becoming more and more acidic. And this line up here, the blue line, is what is measured about 100 miles off of Oahu. And there's a slight slope. There's about, I think, 100 measurements there over the years. And we're seeing in the open water a acidification of the open ocean. One of my concerns was, everyone's talking about the open ocean, but then they say, yeah, but it's going to hurt the coral reefs. The ocean acidification is going to kill the reefs because they'll dissolve them and everything like that. And so the question I asked was, well, what's happening with ocean acidification on the reefs? And who has data for the past 10, 15 years? And it was one of those aha moments that scientists somehow get. And it's like, well, who's been measuring ocean acidification for 10, 20 years? And it was like, you have. Because I used to work for the Department of Health, the same guys who did the bacteria. And when we get a water sample for bacteria, we stick a probe in the water and we measure temperature, salinity, oxygen, and pH. So I crawled over to the Honolulu office and said, please, can I have all your data? And I want everything you got. And here's why. And they gave it to me. And then I threw 98% of it away. And I got to the last 12 years or so where we had really good machines to measure the pH and where you went out repeatedly for a lot of stations. And we went to broke it down to 50 different places all around the state. And in this case, we have readings from Hanalei to Poipu, all over. And this thing, they always say the better the science, the more numbers you have. Well, this is about 25,000 measurements of pH. And so the line that goes through that we're really sure of because we have measured it so many times. And what it shows is that this is the change in pH. Here is the blue line from the open ocean, but this dotted line is what's happening that the Department of Health measured. And so the open ocean water is becoming acidic a lot slower than the nearshore water. They found this in Greenland, they found it in Seattle, but they've never looked at it before in tropical areas. And so here we go, oh, whoa, this is really bad because it's becoming so acidic so fast. And okay, so what does that mean? It means we're measuring it on the beach, but that's right where the water's coming in from the corals and stuff like that. So in addition to that temperature stuff we showed, we're getting really a lot of acidification going on. And we did a very sophisticated computer sorting of this data, and global warming, the CO2 being put out by everything, only accounts for a minor percentage of what is causing it. And what we found was causing a lot more of it was the groundwater, the nearshore effect. And now they're just reporting for one of our becoming most acidic places is down at Poipu Beach. And I'm wondering what's going on there. Now the Department of Health is saying, well, there may be injection wells and water coming in. And what that water brings with them is also the oils off your skin, the DEET, and things like that, which can, the oils are all acidic, and that could cause just this might change. The change is really, really slight, very, very slight. And the real value, I'm not sure whether our values are exactly precise as the chemistry values, but what is important is the slope, the average of 25,000 samples, that you have a slope there. And so what we're seeing, are our waters polluted? In general, our ocean water is not polluted with, say, sewage water here, the ocean isn't, but it's getting too hot and it's getting too acidic to maintain the life. And there's a lot of nutrients going in it, and with a lot of nutrients going in it, the plankton are going to grow, and it's going to become anoxic, and there's not going to be enough oxygen. So the scientists are saying in 70 years, the ocean's going to be really very, very different, and we're going to be in big trouble with that, not counting ocean rise. When you look at the nearshore waters and the streams, we have a lot of evidence that we're having chemicals coming in from septic systems and cesspools and injection wells, and that's coming in directly into the beach water, and it's also going into the streams and ditches, and the pesticides somehow are getting in all the ditches, and all of that's opening up and pouring out into our nearshore waters. The combination of all that stuff is really bad. And our concern here, the main concern we have, as a scientist, I'm worried about all this, but the main thing that Surfrider is concerned about is public health risk. And so that's why we focus on looking at measurements of sewage, and we also measure how much the people use the beaches and stuff like that. And
water, really the rainwater, the amount we've been getting just diminished from, what, 10 years ago or something? We used to have a lot more rain than we have right now.
yeah,
That must be a factor involved.
that must be, yeah. We're running out of drinking water because we haven't been getting as much rainwater. So our underground aquifers are drying up. It's going to be a real problem. And you know, what they did when the Hanama'ulu aquifer drying up, they wanted to put the new housing development there, they grabbed the stream water and cleaned it up and gave it to us, versus the well water, the deep well water. But the other islands are looking at desalination plants and trying to clean it up that way. And I was just saying, one of the things we're looking at in making statements about how bad these waters are and whether they're polluted, if you look at public health risk, what is important about public health risk? One is how bad the water is polluted, how high the concentration of it is, how really bad. And then second, are there any people in it? And if nobody goes in it, then you have an environmental problem, but not a public risk problem. And then if people do go in it, if they're in their kayak, that's a lot different than they're swimming in it or playing in it. And if you have little kids sitting in the streams playing all day, that's even worse. So one of the arguments against our work and our calling out the alarm, Department of Health says, oh, nobody ever goes in that water. Kids never play in that. We don't have to worry about that. And that's why Bonnie, who just walked in really late for this talk, she knows it all because she did a neat project with my supervision, I guess, mentorship, looking at how many people use Kalapaki Bay and play around in Kalapaki Bay. So now I'm cleaning up that report, and we're going to be giving it to the Department of Health, and we can say, over the course of her study, there were 475 people on that bay. So many were out surfing, so many were on the beach, and we had all these people playing in and walking across that little stream there, which is highly polluted. So therefore, we should try to clean it. And it basically comes up for Department of Health and also Surfrider is we're talking all about these monitoring programs, but why bother monitoring if you're not going to do something about it? So our big push right at the moment is to get the Department of Health to put warning signs on those few places that are chronically, over the years, polluted, like New Willy Willy. Put up a warning sign saying, hey, this may be polluted, and then try to figure out what it is and if you can fix it. I think that's going to be my last slide. Yep, it goes off there. And so thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, I also like to mention, I put up these flyers. If you want to take one, we're going to have a membership drive, a party at the Yacht Club here in New Willy Willy on May 7th, I think. May 7th, 6 to 10 p.m. You're all welcome to come for that. It's our 10th anniversary of the Surfrider on Kauai. Really cool.
What can be done to clean up the glyphosate and atrazine and these pesticides?
Some of them break down, but the atrazine hasn't been used 20 years and it's showing up in the drinking water and stuff. And so you can't. The only thing really, like in the streams, you can just hope that it washes out into the ocean, and then it's going to pollute the ocean, right? There is no, let's see, there's nothing like, oh, I'm going to go spray.
You know, I heard this story, I don't have my footnotes with me, but you know Paul Stamets, the mycologist? He's been doing a lot of work about environmental remediation. Some federal program was done where they had all the big chemical companies, and Paul Stamets was the only hippie, come and see who could do the best job of environmental remediation. And his fungus solutions beat out DuPont and Dow and these big guys.
So the idea is that you grow mushrooms and stuff on the soil, and they'll suck up and also break down some of the pesticides and stuff. Yeah. Right. So glyphosate is one that is broken down by bacteria. One of the things that in the soil and stuff like that. One of the other studies that we've done is looked at glyphosate in honey here on the island, and honey doesn't support bacterial growth. So if you get glyphosate in honey, it's not going to break down. So we're looking at the longevity of it, but we found, I think it was about, I'm not really sure of the number, but a third of our samples, something like that, that we got right from the beehives had glyphosate in it, and some of it in high concentrations. So we're trying to get more samples, and the highest concentrations were all on the west side.
These injection wells, it doesn't seem like there's any tests for how badly they're leaking or anything like that. I mean, it's essentially a pipe going into the ground that they're putting pressure into the waste they're pumping down into the ground. Not just human, but chemical waste from the chemical companies or industrial chemicals and that sort of stuff.
You're right.
Pumping into the ground.
Right.
How often do they check them anyway? Do you know?
No, the only thing they do sometimes is test what they're putting in them to make sure, like the sewage treatment plants have to treat the sewage a certain amount before they can inject it. Case on Maui, they had too many people, they were making too much sewage, and so they just dumped it in basically not properly treated. And by putting it in this one well, it came out on the coastline. The nutrients came out on the coastline on Maui and made all the seaweeds grow. So they can test what goes in, but there's no real test on the percolation rate.
They're usually unmanned as well, so somebody can go up there and just take them.
No, they're all sealed, so you can't just dump stuff in them.
Well, I mean, the guys who are doing the pumping, the septic tanks and the sewer systems and that sort of thing are putting it in the ground, I think, kind of unattended. And, well, Grove Farm was letting them pump it on the ground and be open for a while. And it was in accordance with the Department of Health as well, that was a formidable way of doing it.
No. What he's talking about is out across from the stables out at Mahalalipu. Back there, Aqua Engineers had a permit from the Department of Health for biosolids remediation site. And so after you get all your sewage, you bubble it and everything, and it kills the bacteria off, and then you filter it, and then the stuff that comes off the filter, you put out in an area and you dry it, and it turns into soil. And then they shovel that up, and they take it out to Mahalalepu and put it on the ground and till it all in. And they had a permit for that. And it wouldn't be perfectly dry, so there would be some leaching going on. There was not supposed to be any honey trucks pumping stuff out up there. One of the things we've seen is there is a pond up there, and we don't know what that pond does, but people are saying that people were pumping sewage. The pump out people were pumping sewage up in there. But we don't have any proof of that. Yeah, but what's happening is the tests that the Department of Health has done in the stream and areas is finding the chemicals that indicate there's sewage there, and also bacteria. So especially the South Shore is all lava rock and lava tubes, and so the fear was that the stuff goes down, and in most places it would just percolate through all the soil, but here, here's a nice lava tube, and it goes right out to the ocean or right to the stream. That's what they found in Maui. The stuff was coming up like maybe a mile away from the injection well, and it took it, I forget the right number, it took it like 300 days to get there, but it did. It just went right from there to there. And it was not permitted. That was not permitted. So the Department of Health is really concerned because some of the tests they did in the Poipu area says there are a huge number of septic systems. There's a lot of injection wells from the sewage treatment plant, and these chemicals are showing up in the nearshore water. Chemicals are showing up at the beach park. Same in Honolulu, they're showing up. Especially caffeine and cholesterol and DEET insecticide, and some of the suntan lotion is showing up. And how does that get there? Well, they don't know.
And these are still active, the injection wells are still being
Yes.
used all the time. I hear
Yes.
there's 90 or one in Kauai.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah. So the difference between an injection well and a cesspool is a cesspool is wide and shallow, maybe 30 foot deep, 10 feet wide, 30 feet deep. An injection well is maybe 1 foot wide, 2 foot wide, but it's 200 feet deep. But the idea is the same. It's just putting the stuff down. In the case of cesspool, it puts it down 30 feet down. Injection well puts it 250 feet down. It doesn't miraculously disappear. It just doesn't go away. So it's down there and it's doing something, and they can't just, if it was a sealed bottle, they can't keep putting it in day after day. It has to go somewhere. It has to diffuse out.
Well, the injection wells are pressurized as well, aren't they?
Some of them are, yeah.
Yeah, so
Princeville, I mean, they're all over the place. Princeville has one. Honolulu, the little stores have them. I don't know. Lahui is all on sewage treatment plant. And Wailua.
many of them, they ought to be all over the place, it would seem.
Yeah. And yeah.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
something? You said cholesterol, what did you mean, statin drugs or cholesterol in there? Is that what you
Cholesterol. I didn't put that slide in there. I'll have to do it for my tomorrow's talk. But one of the things they ran a test for, I don't know how many, 200 chemicals, the U.S. Geological Survey, on water, and they did it here and on Maui. And cholesterol, you wouldn't find cholesterol. It has to come from the humans. And so they're finding the cholesterol itself associated with caffeine and associated with some of the other stuff.
cholesterol fat, basically? The fat.
Yeah, but it's not an animal fat. It's not, because of the concentrations, I'm not sure why, but they say it's not coming from animals. Because there's no animals in Poipu. It has to be coming from humans. One of the things they did find, and we're starting to look into, is suntan lotion. And oxybenzone apparently kills off the reefs and stuff. And so there was a study done on Maui and Oahu, which showed that it's all over the place, especially if you spray it on. Then not only when you get in the water, it gets into the water, but when you spray it on, it lands in the sand, and the next wave comes in and washes it right out. And it kills the corals and keeps them from reproducing too.
The bug spray as well, I imagine that they use.
Yeah, the DEET probably, but the really nice studies on the suntan lotion. And so there was I don't know what happened to it. There was a bill in the state's House asking them to look more closely at the concentrations of suntan lotion in the state of Hawaii in the waters and what we should be doing about it. Meanwhile, Surfrider is looking at an information campaign to try to stop the companies that use that one chemical oxybenzone, and especially the spray-on stuff, because such a small percentage of when you spray it gets on you. It's going out there. Yeah. Really fast. So I've been doing this science for ages. And Department of Health, I went over for a meeting, and they said, we would like you to look at this data. We've gotten samples from about 40 places, a whole page, about 40 places, and we looked for all these chemicals. And we'd like you to look through it and see if there's anything that jumps out at you. And I said, okay, well, let me see this. I want to see it. And so we're sitting at a conference room, and the tables go from here to the wall, and they get it, and they unfold it. And the spreadsheet was 15 to 20 feet long, right? And they said, well, what do you think? And I go, oh my God, this is, you know. So they sent it to me electronically, and I erased all those columns where there was nothing. We didn't get any values, and I got it down to only about that far of stuff that we did find here.
Is there any kind of campaign or movement to inform people who go to the beach about the coral reef and all of this stuff they're putting on their bodies?
There's very little going on now. The Department of Land and Natural Resources is going to do more, and that's one of the things Surfrider's been trying to talk to people about and try to get some new volunteers to take that up as a project. And starting off just as an information campaign, do you know that if you put this stuff on, it's going to probably hurt the coral reef?
You have to have alternatives because everyone's not going to give up all their...
That's right. Well, there are, the really nasty chemical is this thing called oxybenzone, but there are others that are not as nasty. And you can also wear rash guards. And so, yeah. But the thing is, if you don't use spray, and that's one of the big things, is don't use spray cans of stuff, put the ointment on and rub it in. And secondly, don't do it and then go right in the water. Come out of the water and put it on and lay out there. So those first steps. Eventually, nationwide, we're looking at trying to ban that chemical in suntan lotions. Yeah. Okay, Vonnie, any questions? No. Good. Well, thank you very much for coming.